It was just... Hello, I'm Steph, aka Literati Medium. So today I'm here for another book versus adaptation discussion. We're going to be discussing Those Who Wish Me Dead by Michael Carita with the recent HBO Max movie starring Angelina Jolie. So the premise of this story is that a young boy is being threatened and ends up escaping into the wilderness where he is pursued by ruthless killers. However, that might not be the most dangerous thing he faces in the forest. There will be spoilers in this video, so if you don't want to be spoiled for the book or movie, please turn back now. Of course, I will talk about this book using 3 categories: plot, characters, and relationships. Something about this setup for the plot in the book just doesn't seem realistic to me. I don't see 2 parents being completely untrustworthy of the system and not letting their kid go with US Marshals and instead choosing a third party to watch their kid without them. It seemed like just a convenient way to get rid of the parents in the book. Having the father be the reason they're on the run and then getting killed makes so much more sense to me. I will say, the plot in the book is much more character-driven than the plot in the movie. For example, Jace doesn't trust anyone in the book, so when he smashes Hannah's radio in the tower, it's a completely character-driven choice and makes sense, as opposed to the radio getting struck by a random lightning strike in the movie, which just seemed like a convenient plot point. I know that with the changes they made to the plot in the movie, where Jace has to tell his story in order to be safe, that this makes sense. But it is just a very convenient deus ex machina, and I wasn't about it. The plot twists in the book are all driven by one character, Jamie, and she's not even in the movie, and that's for good reason. The story is so intense just from a survival aspect that they don't really need the twists that Jamie's character throws in. It just seems like a convenient way for the writer to get the characters to do what he wants. Allison leaving the hospital with severe burns and her face all stitched up just doesn't make sense. Burns are one of the most painful injuries you can have, and while Allison is kick-ass, I don't think anybody is that kick-ass. I like the way they handled the fire scene in the movie.
You're pointing it the wrong way. No, I'm not.
Like, it was used as a convenient way for her to get away from the villains, but she wasn't injured severely like she was in the books. It just wasn't believable. Overall, I really enjoyed the plot for the movie better, although I did like the ending of the book better. I don't really see why they decided to kill off Ethan instead of Hannah, because while Hannah does still have a good character arc in the movie, it doesn't have the same impact as it does in the book. Let's talk about characters. So the characters are all pretty different from the book to the movie. So let's start with Jace. The main difference that I see in this character in the book versus the movie is that the fear that Jace has in the book is much more ingrained. He's had a longer time to sit with it, as opposed to in the movie, we're all seeing it unfold in real time, so he's in a very fight, flight, or freeze mentality. Because of this, I really actually enjoyed reading what was going on in Jace's head versus watching his journey in the film. The movie really switches focus to Hannah. Hannah doesn't even show up until 60 pages in the book. Now, I understand, you've got Angelina Jolie playing this character. I will say that it was interesting that they decided to make Hannah's character in the movie a smoke jumper. And I think it has a way to do with the movie trying to show the rules of a woman being in a man's world like they do in the book, which I'll read for you right now. Rule number 1 for a woman on the fire line: you had to outwork everyone. Rule number 2, when you did, you'd be considered less of a woman because of it. I definitely think they changed her character to fit with these rules. It's not until she's away from her coworkers where her femininity really starts to come out, whereas in the book, Hannah feels very feminine all the way through. I'm all for a woman being strong in a man's setting. I just don't want to see her lose her femininity to do it. That being said, reading Hannah's perspective in the book after a while became pretty exhausting, whereas I really enjoyed watching Angelina Jolie on screen and thought she did a really good job with this role. Ethan is probably the character that changed the most between the book and the movie. Now, I love me some John Bernthal. Not as much as I love you-know-who, but I've really enjoyed his gritty, rough characters over the years. He got shortchanged with this character. I think a lot of it had to do in the change of perspective from Ethan as the heroic protagonist to Hannah. I don't think they were bad changes for the movie, but they were bad changes for Ethan's character. Book Ethan is first and foremost a survivor, which if you've seen the movie, you know that's not the case. He was there primarily to be a foil for the Blackwell brothers. It was compelling, and I didn't have a problem with it when I watched the movie for the first time, but then when I read the book, I immediately saw how much they shortchanged this character. I mean, they freaking killed him, but at least they did it in favor for female representation. So Allison was my favorite character in the movie. She was spunky and a survivor and mature, and I loved it. Allison was pretty similar in the book, except that I really hated how her story played out in the book. It just wasn't believable. Next, let's talk about the Blackwell brothers. So I'm talking about these characters in tandem because they really just go together. These brothers are so fascinating in the book. First, their physicality. The way they circle their victims like pack animals so that you can only ever see one person at a time and you don't know what the other person is doing. It just creates this very unsettling feeling all the way throughout the book. And it's very predatory, which just makes sense for the characters. Every time they showed up in the book, I sat up a little straighter, sat a little closer to the edge of my seat. I was anticipating the creepiness. As much as I like Aidan Gillen and Nicholas Hoult, they just didn't have that. They were men on a mission, spurred by some invisible big bad that was created for the movie. This was more believable for the story, but damn if they just weren't as interesting. Although, I did love this scene in the movie.
If I come out, will you let her go?
No, I won't. You know, it won't be this.
Let's talk about relationships. So the most obvious relationship to talk about is Ethan and Allison because they're both married in the book and the movie. I loved their relationship in the movie. They just had great chemistry and seemed so natural with each other and had this kind of love-hate bantery vibe that was just so cute given that, you know, they were about to have a baby together. When she called him out for how he treated Hannah when he arrested her, even though Hannah is his ex, it was just...
I'm like arguing with my wife about how I spoke to my ex-girlfriend. Especially when my wife takes her side.
I'm not taking her side. I'm just not taking yours.
Beautiful. Fun fact, Ethan and Hannah don't even know each other in the book. It's just that the movie made each of the characters connected in some way. Next, let's talk about Jace and Ethan. So just like the movie shortchanged Ethan as a character, that means that they shortchanged the connection between Ethan and Jace as well. In the book, they have this great like mentor-student vibe where Ethan is trying to teach Jace these survival skills. Whereas in the movie, they make Ethan his uncle so that there is a connection there, but I'm trying to remember if they even meet in the movie. I think they meet once. Let's talk about Jace and Hannah. So in the movie, this relationship essentially takes the place of Jace and Ethan's relationship in the book. Right from the get-go, Hannah has a very kind of maternal vibe with Jace, and as she helps him in the situation that he's in to help him survive, that bond grows and becomes something really special. In the book, she just comes off more like a good person who just wants to help a kid. Her helping Jace survive does provide some sort of redemption arc for her in both settings. I would argue that her redemption is more needed in the book. In the book, she completely freezes while doing her job, and that leads to the death of a family and the person that she loves. So there is definitely a lot of guilt related there. In the movie, her guilt is more abstract. You don't see her making any kind of mistake, but people did die and she had to watch them die. But in both instances, the book is more redemption based, whereas the movie, the redemption of saving Jace really is more about her dealing with the trauma of her PTSD.
I looked her right in the eye.
What was it like?
It was beautiful.
I honestly don't really know which version of this that I like better, so I'm going to give a point to both. The Blackwell brothers in the movie just don't hold a candle to the Blackwell brothers in the book. In the movie, they're just two regular military type guys doing a job. While this is much more believable, you completely lose the connection that these two characters have with each other. Even though these two are clearly the villains and don't deserve any kind of redemption, when Patrick dies, I actually found myself tearing up because now the brothers are separated. In the movie, I just felt triumph when they were defeated. So in this case, I would say overall, I liked the book better than the movie, but it was pretty close. I would say both are solid choices if you like this genre. There is a link below if you want to read the book. Of course, please like, comment, and subscribe, and let's see what stories tomorrow brings.